You see XRP sitting at $2.17, XLM hovering at $0.252, XDC at $0.058, and HBAR at $0.148. But if you're just looking at those numbers, you're missing the real story. Because what's happening behind the scenes right now, that's what changes everything. And if you hold any of these four tokens, XRP, XLM, XDC, or HBAR, this is very important. Not in 5 years. Not in some hypothetical utility cycle. Right now. Let's break this down. The death of private blockchains and why that matters now. The death of private blockchains isn't some prediction. It's a postmortem. This chapter is closed, buried. And the funeral? It already happened. You don't have to speculate anymore. You just have to listen to what the trillion-dollar firms are actually saying out loud. Franklin Templeton, a $1.5 trillion asset manager, made it crystal clear. Their tokenized money market fund? It must run on a public blockchain. Not might. Not in pilot. Must. That word matters. Jenny Johnson, their CEO, didn't issue that statement for marketing. She was speaking to regulators, to investors, to Wall Street itself. And what she said cut through all the noise. Private chains are obsolete. They can't scale. They can't interoperate. They don't represent the future. Blockchain is going to be transformational, and we better understand it. That wasn't just a hot take. That was a mandate. Why? Because when you're Franklin Templeton, when you manage $1.5 trillion, you don't experiment. You execute. You don't bet on narratives. You build on what's real. And what's real today is this: Ethereum forks, too expensive and too congested. JP Morgan's Onyx, a walled garden with no on-ramps. Private blockchains, dead on arrival, too isolated, too slow, too corporate. The real winners? The public networks that offer compliance-grade throughput with real-world integration. XRP Ledger, Stellar, XDC Network, Hedera Hashgraph. These aren't theoretical platforms. They're battle-tested. They're scalable. And most importantly, they're open. And here's the part retail hasn't caught up to yet. Every major institution is pivoting to tokenization. BlackRock, Citi, UBS, even the IMF and BIS. And none of them are doing it behind closed doors anymore. Because the future of money, the rails that'll move trillions, has to be interoperable, transparent, and global. You can't build the next financial system behind a firewall. That's why the real power isn't in what blockchain you hold. It's in what architecture your chain is plugged into. So when people online scream, but XRP is centralized, or HBAR has a council, they're stuck in 2018. They don't realize what time it is, because compliance is not a bug. It's the feature that brings in institutional capital. Because governance is not centralization, it's a roadmap for scalable enterprise trust. Because private chains, they were never designed to scale a global economy. They were test pilots in a time when regulators didn't even know what DLT stood for. Well, now they do. And guess what they want? Public networks that don't compromise performance. Networks with built-in compliance tooling. Infrastructure that can be trusted by both banks and governments. That's why public networks like XRP Ledger, Stellar, XDC, and HBAR are in the room. And this is key: you're not early to crypto anymore. But you are early to the infrastructure that powers tokenized finance. The kind of infrastructure that doesn't get hyped on YouTube. The kind that gets adopted in silence, then flips the switch overnight. So let's stop pretending like we're waiting on something. It's already here. The pipes are being laid. The rails are being chosen. The nodes are live. And if your project isn't on a public network with real throughput, real compliance, and real partnerships, it's not just behind. It's irrelevant. That's XRP. That's XLM. That's XDC. That's HBAR. Public blockchains are no longer fringe. They're becoming the foundation. If your token isn't designed to operate in a public, regulated, and performance-demanding world, it's going to get left behind. And that's why this moment matters. Because what used to be theory is now deployment. XRP and XLM are already inside the financial system. Let's stop pretending this is theoretical. Let's stop pretending we're waiting for adoption. The reality is XRP and XLM are already integrated into the plumbing of the global financial system. And this isn't just about ISO 20022 anymore, although that's a huge piece of it. The ISO 20022 messaging standard, now fully active across global finance, is the language of money. It's how central banks, SWIFT, and financial institutions exchange payment data. And two digital assets were built to be compatible with it from the ground up: XRP and XLM. These aren't altcoins trying to squeeze their way into relevance. These are financial-grade protocols architected to plug directly into the infrastructure that moves hundreds of trillions of dollars per year. Now let's talk receipts. Small Blue Diamond SWIFT, the international payments titan connecting over 11,000 banks, just completed a live tokenization pilot with Chainlink, top custodians, and traditional financial infrastructure. And what did the pilot show? That public blockchains can securely move tokenized real-world assets across chains. XRP and XLM were part of that architecture, not hypothetically but structurally. Small Blue Diamond, the DTCC, which settles over $4 quadrillion annually in securities, just filed a blockbuster patent. Inside, explicit mentions of XRP and XLM being used as liquidity transfer mechanisms for tokenized assets. This isn't some startup. This is the literal backbone of Wall Street settlement infrastructure, designing their future around two public blockchains. Small Blue Diamond RippleNet, powered by XRP, is already live across corridors in Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America. Banks in Japan, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil are actively using Ripple technology to move real money, not crypto, real fiat through a DLT-powered liquidity layer. Small Blue Diamond, meanwhile, Stellar's blockchain, XLM, is being used by MoneyGram and Circle to build global on-ramps and off-ramps for stablecoins. In Africa, in Latin America, in refugee camps. Real people are cashing in and out of USDC through mobile phones powered by Stellar Tech. Let this sink in. $4 quadrillion in annual securities clearing is being rebuilt with XRP and XLM in mind. SWIFT itself, which underpins the modern global banking infrastructure, is running tests designed for tokenized interoperability, and they're not using Ethereum. Government-level financial messaging systems are transitioning to ISO 20022, and only a handful of digital assets natively support that standard. XRP and XLM are at the top of that list. Why? Because these networks solve the hard problems: settlement finality in seconds, near-zero transaction cost, regulatory alignment, built-in trustless liquidity, public but permission-ready architecture. Institutions don't care about tokenomics or meme hype. They care about infrastructure, compliance, and scale. And the reason XRP and XLM keep showing up in central bank reports, patents, pilot programs, and global finance conferences is simple. They are no longer options. They are requirements. So while retail panics over red candles and 24-hour volatility, institutional finance is doing something else entirely. They're building the pipes. They're rebuilding the rails of the financial system with XRP and XLM embedded directly into the flow of money. This isn't coming. It's here. And if you hold either of these tokens, understand something. You're not holding speculative assets anymore. You're holding the base layer of what the global financial system is already becoming. This is not about future narratives. This is about current integrations. The world is going on-chain, and XRP and XLM are already where the money's going. XDC is building for the quiet use cases that move trillions. XDC isn't built for headlines. It's built for trade finance, and trade finance moves the world. While influencers chase hype coins and NFTs, the XDC network is quietly solving problems that legacy systems haven't been able to fix for decades. It's the infrastructure layer that governments and enterprises are starting to lean on for one reason. It works. XDC is integrated with the Trade Finance Distribution Initiative, TFD, which includes some of the biggest names in international finance like Standard Chartered, Lloyds Bank, SMBC, and ING. These institutions touch trillions in trade finance annually, and they're not in it for the speculation. They're in it to upgrade global commerce. The XDC 2.0 upgrade was more than a facelift. There was a full-scale infrastructure expansion, gasless subnets for customizable enterprise-grade deployment, validator NFTs for more decentralized and incentive-aligned governance, smart contract upgrades that make compliance, KYC/AML, and secure automation first-class features. But here's the real unlock. XDC is being positioned to tokenize the very backbone of global trade documents like invoices, letters of credit, bills of lading, and customs paperwork. You want to move trillions through crypto? That's how you do it. This isn't about gaming. It's not about NFTs. It's not even about stable coins. This is about digitizing and automating the slowest, most paper-bound industry on the planet, and doing it with a blockchain that's already ISO 20022 compliant, cost-effective, and built to integrate without disruption. And XDC is already seeing real traction, used in pilot programs across the UAE, Singapore, and India, being adopted by fintech startups in the export-import space, actively integrated into digital trade ecosystems backed by law firms and financial regulators. No marketing gimmicks, no promises of 100x, just execution. And when trade finance finally flips from paper to tokenized flows, XDC won't be fighting for market share. It'll already be plugged in. That's why you don't hear about it on Twitter, because real adoption doesn't trend. It just scales, and XDC is scaling. The retail narrative is years behind what's actually happening. Let's not sugarcoat it. The retail crypto narrative is stale. The stuck in a loop. Bitcoin dominance. Ethereum gas wars. Meme coin hype. Dog-themed pumps and dumps. It's the same song on repeat. Meanwhile, the real shift is already in motion, and most of retail is completely missing it. Because while everyone's arguing over which coin will 100x next cycle, institutions are deploying capital and infrastructure into tokenization. Not for speculation, for settlement, for liquidity, for global market integration. And every major institution that matters is saying the same thing. The DTCC, which clears $4 quadrillion in securities annually, is piloting digital settlement rails that name XRP and XLM explicitly. The OMFIF, whose advisory board includes central banks and sovereign funds managing $43 trillion, has stated publicly that DLT-based tokenization is now a strategic imperative for global finance. The IMF, BIS, and World Bank have all released deep dive reports on CBDCs, programmable money, and financial infrastructure. And you know what shows up repeatedly? Interoperability layers, public networks, asset tokenization, and the names tied to those conversations: XRP, XLM, XDC, HBAR, every single time. Not because they have the best mean marketing, but because they have the infrastructure to move billions daily across borders within regulation at real speed with real security. And here's the kicker. While retail investors are still debating whether HBAR is centralized or whether XRP can be used without Ripple, the world's largest financial institutions have already made their decisions. They're not playing Twitter games. They're not reading Reddit threads. They're reading patents, testing rails, funding pilots, signing MOUs, and the infrastructure they're aligning with is clear. So ask yourself, are you holding these tokens because you're waiting for a bull run pump, or because you actually understand what's being built underneath the financial system? Because when this next global liquidity phase kicks in, it won't matter how loud influencers are screaming about altcoin season. What will matter is whether your token is actually wired into the system. This is the wake-up call. Meme coins might get you a dopamine hit, but these 4 tokens, they're getting wired into the rails. That's not speculation. That's documentation. That's integration. And the deeper you dig, the more obvious it gets. The smart money isn't betting on trends. It's building the pipes. The window is closing. This isn't hype. This isn't theory. This isn't maybe someday. We're in it. Tokenized assets are no longer experimental. They're being tested by trillion-dollar asset managers. Pilots are no longer theory, they're moving into production. Regulatory frameworks are no longer unclear. They're being formalized across jurisdictions. And what's powering that shift? Does not Bitcoin, does not mean coins, does not the coins trending on Twitter. It's the infrastructure-grade protocols XRP, XLM, XDC, and HBAR. We're entering the infrastructure era of crypto. The one where winners aren't picked based on influencers, but on throughput, compliance, uptime, and use case alignment. And the window to be early? It's closing. Fast. Because by the time this next phase goes live, by the time governments are running stablecoin systems on-chain, by the time trade finance is fully tokenized, by the time public sector digital ID rolls out globally, the price action you're hoping for, it'll already be gone. You'll either have positioned yourself ahead of it or be chasing it. So here's what to do now. Ignore the noise. Watch the rails being built. Follow the smart money. Track what gets integrated, not what gets hyped. And make no mistake, you are not early to crypto anymore. But you are still early to the real infrastructure. And that's where asymmetric opportunity still lives. So like this video, subscribe to Be Crypto Smart and pay attention not just to what's trending, but to what's being built into the system. Because when this flips, there's no going back. This isn't about speculation anymore. It's about architecture. It's about financial plumbing. It's about the pipes of the next financial era. And you're either riding those rails or watching them pass you by. Your call.